means that you teach kids to memorize certain material instead of actually teaching them how to solve problems and questions that would be in the real world.
Teaching to the test is when a teacher only prepares their students for material that will be covered on a test and not other things that could be covered as well.
Okay, teaching to the test. I think when teachers teach to the test, the goal is not so much to help kids learn math, in my case, but to learn specific math so they can get a good grade on the test. So the point of teaching to the test is to kind of ignore other things that come up that might be mathematically interesting and really just get down to the how do we get this problem right when it shows up on the
And so for me, that phrase would mean that if there was a set of 3 or 4 skills that students were supposed to know for a test, that all of the classroom time would be devoted to sort of practice examples that would be similar to the ones that would appear on the test, and that it would be at the expense of more in-depth learning experiences. So to me, the phrase is mostly indicative of surface level learning being prioritized over in-depth learning experiences.
Well, I think teaching to the test means that the teacher just gives you the facts about the test. They just hand you a copy of the test and say, here, study this, and that's it.
I think teaching the material that you would use to answer questions on a test.
I feel like every student has had at least one experience with teachers teaching to the test, whether it be through like AP courses where you literally learn all year to pass the test, or it just be when you're young and you learn to take your pass test or things like that.
More so in college, definitely. Probably, yes, I mean, I have experience with it, like I said, in college. Probably my next one would be, all through middle school, my teachers were always good about, all right, like being like on a Monday, all right, here, the test is gonna be on Friday, this is what it's gonna be on. And throughout the week, going over every little part of the test.
So obviously the benefits of teaching to the test are that your students pass the test, but some disadvantages would definitely be that although they pass that test, you probably could ask them the same things an hour later and they probably wouldn't know.
I feel like the advantages of teaching to the test are that your students will pass the test, and the test is standardized, so it's kind of an equivocal way of measuring all the students' knowledge of a certain subject. But if you only teach to the test, you could be missing out on information that could be very relevant.
Well, I think some advantages to it are, you do good on the test in term, that boosts your grade in the class, boosts your GPA, makes you look better. And disadvantages is you don't really learn anything other than what's on the test, because when I had experience with that, I would just learn what I had to for the test and then dump it all. I would learn nothing from it.
You would have to change the rules where you don't have to take standardized tests and just have competent teachers that can teach certain parts of a curriculum well. Or honestly, I went to a private school where we didn't have any standardized tests. I did well and I learned a lot and I retained a lot of the information, and it's still just as difficult, and there were still cumulative tests at the end of every year, but it wasn't one that was standardized that the teachers had to teach to.
Well, I think that just don't worry about your teacher rating, so to say, trying to make your class look good. Just try to help the student as much as possible, learn the material for the test, but also other things to connect back together with the real world and stuff like that.
I think I did well on the test that I was taught to take just to pass those tests. If I was given the same information I was given then, or the same test that I was given then, I probably would pass it.
I feel like I did well on the tests I were taught to take, but at the same time, I don't feel like I retained any of the information. I was just able to just put it down on paper.
Yeah, I most definitely did do well on those tests. Like, I don't remember anything from the test, but I think I did do good on them, just because I just had to memorize the study guide that they gave for us and just spit it back out onto the paper for the test.
Yes. I mean, obviously, because I was told and I was taught the best way how to take the test. But I'd say about 60% of the tests I did well on in my educational career were just because I knew it. Not because I was taught how to take the test, but more of I just knew the information and I just knew exactly what the information was. Now when it comes to standardized testing, it was horrible because the teachers taught you exactly how to take the ACT or the SAT, but they didn't really do a decent job of telling you what the material was and helping you.
So when I taught middle school, and I taught middle school for 9 years, I think that I was probably guilty of that from time to time, especially with what would be considered my lower tracked students. I wanted them to be successful, and I was probably guilty of, in my mind, trying to make the math easier for them by saying, okay, just do this. Just do this. Right? Because my whole point was just to get them to an answer. Now, I don't believe that anymore, but it was something I certainly did when I was in the classroom from time to time. I would say even right now, I don't really teach to the test, but I test to my teaching. I just made that up, so I don't totally know if I know what that means, but to me that means, so the things that we do in class, if we're going to have a test and somebody said we're going to keep score, I want my students to know what the things are that I think are important for them to know. So I will be very clear with them about what's going to be on the exam. Like, here are the things that I want you to be able to know and do, not just because somebody said we're going to take an exam, but because this is the stuff you're going to do in the class.
I have been, although I've taught in public school, I've taught public high school English and Spanish and middle school Spanish, I have never faced my students taking a standardized test at the end of the year I was teaching them. When I taught 10th grade, I was teaching in Virginia, and students took a standardized English test at the end of 11th grade. So it was definitely on the minds of teachers, but I never felt like my classroom was overtaken by my concerns about preparing students for one or two particular skills. Fortunately, I guess in terms of English literature and language arts classrooms in secondary schools, a lot of the skills needed to prepare for those tests are skills you're always working on in a literature class, like improving the degree to which you're reading with detail, improving the degree to which you are writing with detail, and a lot of the ways to improve in those areas of work are to simply keep doing them and to simply practice them. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I ever can think of a particular incident where I was particularly teaching to a test, but also you are always mindful of preparing your students for the kinds of general skills they're going to need to have.
I would say that I could have been a much better teacher when I taught middle school if I knew, understood, and believed what I know, understand, and believe now. I think by trying to focus on procedures and trying to get kids just to be able to memorize something and do it was harmful to them. I don't think it ever helped them like math, because math was just a chore that they had to get through. And I think if I had approached it differently, not only would they have been more successful, on the tests, I guess, but just they would have had a better attitude towards math. And that's something that really would have paid off as, beyond testing.
I think that teaching to the test, whether it helps or hurts students, is really going to matter how it's done. I think it could be helpful to a student that a teacher is working with a rigorous set of standards, and in an ideal scenario, a teacher is able to incorporate very specific content area pieces of data into a larger project that students will remember, because they're maybe producing some sort of a product or making a website or something, and they might have to acquire skills along the way to produce that larger product. So in an ideal scenario, a teacher could check off the boxes that they need to check for their students to be prepared, but do it in a meaningful way.
Throughout this project, I realized that a lot of people knew what teaching to the test is. Most of those people knew that their teachers were teaching them to the test, and they knew that if that teacher gave them that test again, that they could not take it and pass it. A lot more people than I realized on Clemson's campus and throughout the community knew that teaching to the test is a problem and it should be fixed, because students are not really learning the information. They are just retaining it to regurgitate it back onto a test.